How do you have tough conversations? How do you create a breakthrough with anyone, anytime, anywhere? How do you get out of tough situations that are intractable? How do you start? It all comes from one thing.
Welcome to Season 2 of Leadership Impact, the podcast for modern executives who are reinventing leadership within their organizations, with your host, Executive Leadership Coach and CEO of the Granger Network, Kari Granger, and me, Paul Adams, CEO of Sound Financial Group. This season focuses on accountability, and to support you in increasing accountability in yourself and in those you lead, we're providing a special rate for our listeners who want to engage in one of our accountability courses. Text the word accountability to 555-888 for more information. This is episode 29, How to Create Breakthroughs with Anyone.
Welcome back to Leadership Impact. Paul, I want to talk about the secret sauce to all of this today.
Are you sure you want to put this on the podcast where just anybody can listen to it without writing you huge checks to have you come into their large organizations?
Oh, good point. Let's wrap this episode up.
Okay, next. No, please.
That's why you are my financial advisor, because I give it all away, apparently. That's what I've been told anyway.
But it really is, like, having heard us talk about this concept, like, I hear it unlock so many new things. And the thing I want to make sure we touch on is how people can get the secret sauce wrong. It's so close, but it can go real bad. So with that, you want to tell them?
And let's just say, nobody's going to believe me, but we have some real secret sauce that you have to pay for.
Very good.
Just don't listen to the rest of the episodes. That's all.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Well, we may have said it, but you didn't say it was.
So they would know.
That's
okay.
right.
Well,
That's
people are
right.
pretty excited about this. Should we leave it? I don't know. Maybe I don't want to say now.
Let it loose.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you do all of this? I mean, just everything from episode 1 to even just the last episode we did on requests and requirements. How do you broach the topic of accountability? How do you have tough conversations? How do you create a breakthrough with anyone, anytime, anywhere? How do you get out of tough situations that are intractable? How do you start? It all comes from one thing. It comes from curiosity, a mood of curiosity. I mean, just think about that episode on requests and requirements. Paul, is this a requirement or a request coming from a mood of righteousness?
Yeah.
Okay, because you obviously didn't make that clear. Or, Paul, is this one a request or is this one actually something I have to do? Like, is this more of a requirement or more of a request? I mean, it's same question, totally different.
And that's the part of, like, where I can't wait to unlock that in this episode, is the way people often approach it. And it's easy to do, especially if you have a history with somebody. I've seen me do it where I say the right words, like, why did you do it this way?
Yeah.
Somebody just spins off like, I lost a relationship, I got to recover, like all kinds of stuff. I didn't intend that outcome, but I didn't take care of the mood to have the outcome that I wanted. And that's what I'm hoping we can unlock for our listeners and me today.
I mean, totally. You could have said the exact same words from a mood of curiosity. Like, why did you do it that way? It actually incites curiosity from the other, or looking, or real contemplation and reflection. You know, otherwise you just get a slew of explanations and justifications and anything to just keep you away.
Oh, which is super, like, you're more likely to trigger that, especially if you're listening now. You've gotten all the way here to episode 29, and you've been hopefully developing as a leader along the way and taking some of this. And yet you could be interacting with somebody you have a history with where they know in the past everything was a requirement. Everything was maybe a little top down on them. So how do we broach that for that first interaction for somebody where now they want to ask from a curiosity perspective, but they could well put somebody into a full defensiveness mode if they ask that way?
Yeah, I think you actually have to start by being curious. You know, it doesn't work to be righteous, like you did it wrong, and then pretend to be curious on top of that. You actually have to cultivate curiosity.
And if the listeners are at all curious about whether or not she's right that that doesn't work, I've tried that. It doesn't. You can't fake a mood. You can fake words.
Uh-huh. Yeah. But you can fake a mood. Yeah, even great actors. So I did this really cool course once with actors. And what I learned from that is great actors aren't just even playing the part, they're being it. Right? So there's actually even an authenticity to extraordinary actors versus like I'm this way and I'm pretending to be a different way. Or I'm acting a different way. No, they're just being a different way. They're masters of cultivating being and world. So yeah, you can't fake it, but moods are something you can actually cultivate. You're not just stuck with it. A lot of people think that the circumstances put me in this mood. Well, no, your response to the circumstances, there's a mood that was correlate with your response to the circumstances. So your response is put you in that mood. And certainly we have, strong circumstances is very valid, the reaction you'd have. We have default moods, we have automatic moods. The one that is kind of my default one we talked about before is annoyed. So something doesn't go the way it should go because I am plagued with high expectations, and then that just sets it up for them not to be met. Right.
Yes.
So like that's my journey in life, is to let go of expectations and do creation instead, right? Together, or partner or whatever, like at any rate, that's my journey.
When I was in my early 20s, a guy who's a mentor of mine, who had just occurred to me, he said, I want you to picture something in your mind so you never forget it. And I said, what? He says, those caution yellow signs on the side of the road? It's like danger, rocks falling, etc. He says,
yeah,
expectations are a dangerous thing. I want you to never forget that and picture it in your mind.
Yeah.
And his name was Andrew, actually. And just an incredible thing that has made me so aware of things that impact my mood.
Mm-hmm.
Not to go too far off the rails, but just in the cultivating moods, realizing, wait, is this a mood that's appropriate for this? Or just because I was expecting something different, maybe inappropriately expecting something different to be delivered?
Oh, totally. I had a teacher once that said expectations are a barrier to love. They're a barrier to joy, like all of that. Okay. We've gotten a little bit down a rabbit hole, but coming back.
Curiosity, when you came on our podcast at Your Business, Your Wealth, you told a story some time ago about when you were dropped into Iraq to lead this Kuwait, to run this aircraft maintenance division in a division that was so far below standard at the time of mission capable. The way I remember is there's holes like after you bombed in the roofs of the building.
Let's hear this. I want to hear how you tell the story. This is going to be good. Okay, go for it.
Well, I end up telling this story a lot when people like partially complete a strategy financially, or they've only done part of the thing and they're dissatisfied with the outcome. And I tell this story about you going into Iraq.
Hold on. Wait a second. Are they paying you?
Yeah.
I want royalties on that payment.
You got it. You got it. Just like iTunes. Every time I say it, I'll just send a Venmo. So, but this is like you going in and saying, so I noticed that what we did is we basically built or put trailers inside this big bomb shelter building that actually has holes from bombs in the roof. Has anybody explored that we just build a building next door on these other flat 5 acres and we'll just have a building that works?
Yeah, exactly. So can I fill in a little bit because of the curiosity piece, right? So for half of my deployment, it was of course, there was this huge bombed out bomb shelter building, which we all thought that the Kuwaitis should get their money back, right? Because it didn't work, obviously. But it was so obvious. We built a trailer inside of the shelter that didn't work. And it was of course. But see, it was of course because everything in the unit was, we were very cynical, very resigned, very, it was all just kind of like, we can put up with things until we're done with our deployment. And that was like the pall that just hung over all of us. And it wasn't until I had a personal experience in combat that what we were doing mattered in a way that I hadn't seen before, which opened up a level of curiosity, right? So there was an event that happened that had me start being curious about, why we aren't excellent. Like, what could possibly be in the way of us providing the best of everything that we were supposed to provide, because lives were counting on it. I didn't have that context, that way of observing before.
And I just want our listeners to hear the question you asked yourself. That's the mood of curiosity. Like, I don't know if you guys heard the shift. Kari was telling a story about something, and then the mood, even in Kari's voice, hit that back button for like 30 seconds and hear it again. Because the way she went from telling a story to the mood of curiosity, like, why is it that's the sound of the mood of curiosity?
Yeah. And it's better to remain open to learning something than to remain closed that it is a certain way. And the main point really of being curious is so that we learn something we didn't know, right? So it does help to imagine that they would have a really good reason for why they did or didn't do what they did, right? And so in the curiosity, I started to see everything differently. Like, why is that? That doesn't, and I started to not take things for granted. And one of the things I asked at one point was, well, who owns that land right there? Well, we do. Okay, this may be a really stupid question, but is there any reason why we haven't just built a new building there rather than a trailer made out of like not good material? And
the dust is getting in on the aircraft parts while we're trying to repair an engine.
And they said, well, no, we hadn't really thought of that. And it wasn't a few months later, we had built a $5.5 million new facility with running water. We actually had running water and toilets and, internet access. And, it'd been that way for so long, but nobody had been curious about it.
About why it was the way it was. It didn't even need to be why it is different. Just why is it this way? Mm-hmm. There's a story from early in my career where for a long time, I don't know where I picked it up, but I thought I needed to be the smartest person in the room. And I think some of our listeners right now may be in that spot of you spent an entire career and you've advanced, and most of your advancement has literally been around this idea of needing to be the smartest person in the room and have the answers. People come to you for answers. He said, Paul, you will never lose ground with people by asking a question first instead of assuming you know the answer. And that's where I first got a taste of the mood of curiosity, was just, why don't I just ask the question? And I might be right, but with a team, I never need to be the one that's considered the smartest, because there's an old philosopher by the name of John Dewey that would say, a question well put is half solved. A problem well put is half solved. And just being able to question in so that people start pulling together the pieces of whatever the breakdown is, and then suddenly the team bubbles up the solution, because it probably wasn't you that had to draw the plans. It wasn't you that was the foreman on the job doing whatever, but it was you creating, because it created curiosity in them too, I would bet.
Right, exactly. In fact, who I asked my boss. So I didn't ask the people that reported to me.
That's a great distinction.
I actually asked my boss. I said, this might be I did disclaim it a little. This might be kind of a stupid question. Like, maybe I should know this already, but is there any reason we haven't built a building? And his eyes lit up, and he's the one who got it approved. He's the one who made it happen. It was definitely on his performance report.
Yeah.
And, the rest of ours, obviously. But yeah, you're right, though, that just the mood of curiosity that opened up so much, and that's even in the smallest things. So I said earlier, I battle myself the mood of annoyance. And when can...
I've seen it in you, but I've also seen it in me. That's why I'm laughing. And it's a tough one, because I think when somebody is I'm not meaning to pat you and I on the back here, but actually patting everybody on the back who's listening, like, you're highly productive people in the marketplace. Your ship has wake.
Yeah.
And when you're annoyed, you just feel like it's like, I don't know, it's not that big of a deal, but there's some smaller boats out there. You'll just flip over with your wake.
If you bring curiosity to the simple things. So rather than my getting annoyed that, you didn't send the email to Paul, rather than my just going right there, which completely closes down possibilities and doesn't produce a breakthrough with anybody for me either, is if I start with curiosity, like, wow, what had you, what had you not be able to complete that? What happened that prevented you from being able to send that email to Paul? Should we look at that? There's just like a disarming piece about it that's very different than, you said you were going to send that to Paul and you didn't.
Why?
Why? Why didn't you do that? We should do a whole episode, by the way, on what versus why. You want to do that?
Oh, my word. Yes.
Okay.
Why would
Let's
we do that, Kari? No, just kidding. Just kidding. I'm with you though. That idea of us being in a spot, I think that especially when that mood of curiosity, again, just that tone in your voice change almost leaves people with there's grace on the other side of this conversation or creativity or openness. But it's like there's an opening at the other end of curiosity to everybody biologically, somebody who hasn't done any development work, hasn't done any of that, hasn't been listening to this podcast. I would still encourage people to send a copy of this podcast, have coffee with somebody in your organization, use different ones so you get different people's insights. So you can just have a coffee a week, an episode a week. Life is easy and your productivity will go through the roof. Mm-hmm. I think this simplicity of even somebody without any significant training hears curiosity different. It's biological.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just reflecting on I did a strategic planning session with a executive team, and it was okay. It was solid. It wasn't fireworks, and sometimes when fireworks don't happen, I get really disappointed because I get my high expectations, right?
Yes.
But it was solid. There's no complaints. We were like, oh yeah, that's exactly where I thought we would get to today. But in the middle of the day, and there was ups and downs, but in the middle of the day, we had just created the future. And the strange thing happened. It was like, all right, now, let's get to work on how are we going to meet this future? What are kind of the strategic priorities, right, that we need to be focused on in order to accomplish this future? And all of a sudden, the mood in the room just stalled. The energy went way down. And in the past, I would just try to force it, right? And then I'd just move people into groups and, just do it anyway.
Yes.
And I've learned that getting curious. So I did get curious about it. And of course, I did get a little annoyed, right? And I really had to manage that because it was like, wait, we just spent 5 hours getting here. And now, and then they were questioning it like, well, maybe this isn't the right future or, all these things. And I was just watching myself go in and out of annoyance because I only had a couple hours to get to where they wanted to go. And which was not useful. Anytime I was there, it would stall the progress. Or if I would flip over to curiosity and things would open up, new conversations would happen. Wow, I'm not sure about our ability to execute, or we're going to need to bring in different people, or, every time I asked a question from curiosity, it would start moving us through that. Every time that I would slip into annoyance, it would just create like a push-pull. And I watched myself in and out of that for a good bit of time. And so as I reflect on it, because it's just yesterday, right? So I'm reflecting on it and I'm thinking, wow, if I had even just maintained the space of curiosity, I think we could have easily turned that day into fireworks, not just, hey, that was solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm hoping our audience could take away today is to practice curiosity. So I'll say what I'm going to do taking away from today, because I want to make sure that I practice in a way that works in the workplace. So I'm just starting at home. I have a 6-day RV trip coming up with the family and just hang out with everybody and just all the conversations. I'm just going to cultivate that mood of curiosity in a super safe environment among friends so that I begin to notice the difference of asking questions and even inventing questions to ask, to be curious about around, hey, who's getting the firewood or whatever the stuff is. And then being able to translate that to work on Monday. And I think that would be a great tool for everybody to use. Like just, if you're listening to this right now and you're going into the weekend, and then just try to find things to be curious about and notice how it feels differently. Because it's also biological for you that you're going to feel different in that mood of curiosity, and it's going to trigger that in them. And my hope is that what will happen for some of you listening today is that you're going to take away something that's going to be valuable enough that you'll actually end up either on social media or even like write to Kari's LinkedIn page and send a note saying, I chose to be curious about this, and this is what opened up for us. Because I think it's that kind of game changer, and it'll allow you to play a game of, I'm going to have a breakthrough around curiosity good enough for me to send Kari a message on LinkedIn.
I like what you said. And what I've found is a lot of people send me stuff, but our Granger network page
very good.
Doesn't have as much following as me personally.
Yes.
So, if you're listening, follow us on LinkedIn, the Granger network page, post it there, and let's, we can have a conversation.
Go write this episode on Twitter and tell everybody in the world what you got. So I thank you again, Kari. I can't wait to try this out myself. I can't wait to hear from some of our audience to see what they got out of this. And as always, and from the Granger Network and Kari and I, we hope that this has been a contribution to your leadership impact. Thank you for tuning into Leadership Impact, the podcast for modern executives who are reinventing leadership within their organizations. Subscribe now at Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. And to support you in your leadership impact, we've offered a special course rate to you, our listeners. Just text the word accountability to 555-888 and you'll receive the link. Learn more at grangerNetwork.com and join us next week on how to transform your leadership impact with accountability.